Hey guys, welcome to a new video. Like, comment and subscribe if you enjoy. Without any further interruptions, enjoy the what if. Chapter 3. If a tree falls in the forest. Naruto smiled as the landlord handed him the key to his own small apartment. The elderly man was impressed with Naruto wanting to be on his own at such a young age, and was even more surprised when the blonde refused the discount that he was willing to offer. The apartment was a simple room with no real amenities, and as a result was cheap to begin with, so Naruto felt the discount was unnecessary. He only needed the apartment for a short time as a place to rest and relax when he wasn't doing jobs. Makarov had offered to let him bunk in the basement of the guild hall, which he had done for the first night, but the guild master was being so nice to him that he didn't want to take advantage of the man's hospitality. He had been living by himself since he was 6 years old, and had been paying for everything with his own money since he was 12. There was no reason why he couldn't manage now in this new world. If he had to be honest with himself, it was a nice feeling to be able to start fresh. No one knew who he was, and he didn't have the stigma of the Kyuubi hanging all over him. I take offense to that. I am not a stigma. Then what are you? A glorious mass of chakra with a consciousness. One that you still seem to have trouble appreciating, even after you've used my chakra so many times. You mean appreciating things like making me lose both of my parents, having my village ignore me for most of my childhood, and causing a madman to chase after me these last couple years. Touché. Isn't mutual hatred a wonderful thing? Regardless of the Kyuubi's apparent thoughts on the matter, it really was nice to be starting over. He missed his home, certainly, and would begin looking for ways to get back as soon as he could, but there wasn't anything stopping him from trying to enjoy his time in this dimension as much as he could. Thinking back to his new temporary apartment, he had a clone go back up to the room and drop off his bag of supplies. He had picked up another job from the board in the guild before he went apartment hunting, and had grabbed one that he would be able to finish in a short amount of time. A construction company had gotten a build order, but they were lacking on the lumber needed to fulfill the order within the allotted time frame. As a result, they put in a request at the guild for someone to bring them the logs they needed. The faster the delivery, the better the pay. If he could finish it on the first day, it would be another 35,000 jewels in his pocket. Heck, he wouldn't even need the full day. A couple hours at most should be enough to finish the job. If he was lucky, he might even have enough time to finish one more job today as well. Most of the missions he'd seen so far seemed like a cakewalk. If only the D-rank missions back home paid this well. Naruto. The blonde stopped walking as he heard his name, and turned around to look at the person who was calling for him. Erza promptly came running up to him, and bent over slightly with her hands on her knees, panting. You know, it might be easier to run if you weren't wearing that heavy-looking suit of armor. The redhead simply stared at him for a moment as if he had just uttered the most brilliant thing in the world. Shaking her head, she muttered some words that he didn't understand, then glowed for a couple seconds. In not much more time than it took him to blink, she had changed into much more casual clothing. She was now wearing a blouse that ended just above her knees and jeans underneath. In fact, since she changed her clothes, Naruto reminded himself that he'd need to get his own change of clothes soon. His current Junin outfit was getting a little worn out from being used and washed every day over the past month, and even his vest was needing some patchwork. Putting that out of his mind for now, he focused on Erza, who seemed to finally be catching her breath. Is there something I can help you with? Erza shook her head, then stood up straight and promptly bowed in front of him. I wish to apologize for acting like a fool in front of you earlier. Did Makarov send you to apologize to me, or something? Erza stood back up, looking confused. No, why should he have to? I was wrong, and I came to say I was sorry. Naruto let a ghost of a smile cross his face. I see. Well, apology accepted then. I also want to apologize for being a lot more blunt and cold than I probably should have been with a new guild mate. The redhead simply waved it off. You don't have to apologize for that, it was deserved. In fact, I think you should hit me for the way I acted to you. I am your superior in the guild, and I should have known better. Naruto's face went slack. Hit her? Why would you want me to hit you? I feel it is an appropriate action, and proves that I wish to repent for my actions. Rubbing at his face, Naruto sighed. Are you sure? I mean, I think it's a little extreme, but if you demand it. Standing firm, Erza closed her eyes and obviously tensed in front of him. It's deserved. I'm prepared. Fine then, here goes. Naruto moved swiftly up to the girl, and he saw her flinch as his footsteps approached her. He brought his hand up, pressed the tip of his forefinger against the pad of his thumb, and none too gently flicked her forehead. Ow! Erza promptly opened her eyes and rubbed at her forehead. What was that? Naruto chuckled, grinning at her, then lifted his hand up and made the flicking motion. You asked me to hit you, so I did. You didn't say where, with what, or how hard. So I used my imagination. At first the girl looked like she wanted to retort, but settled on a grin and shook her head instead. I feel as if I deserved worse, but thank you, Naruto. Sheesh, don't be so hard on yourself. I'd feel bad if I gave a pretty girl a bruise. He couldn't tell if Erza blushed or not, her face was already red from running halfway across town. She did say something, however, and even though the voice was quiet, he was still able to hear it. Pretty girl. Yep, you heard me. What, you don't think you are? Erza was obviously startled, she probably didn't believe that he would hear her mumbling. She quickly looked away, most likely embarrassed. You're the first person my age to say that. Most people just think of my code name, Titania, and automatically assume I'm just some monstrously strong hag of sorts. Hearing Erza call herself monstrously strong caused old memories of Naruto's to return, when he used to call Sakura the same thing. If this girl was anything like Sakura was, perhaps they'd get along well enough. When she wasn't arguing with Miragen, she actually seemed like a normal teenage girl. So far, anyway. Well, I don't know about other people, but I haven't formed an opinion yet. Naruto gave her a small smile, then gently patted her shoulder before turning around, continuing his trek towards the outskirts of Magnolia Town so he could complete his mission. Wait, what are you doing right now? The blonde stopped walking again, but looked over his shoulder instead of turning around this time. He gestured with his hand in the direction he was traveling. I picked up another mission when the job board updated. I have nothing better to do, and I need the money. I see. Erza looked down for a second, then quickly looked back up and nodded, as if she had made up her mind about something. Can I come with you? I won't do anything if you don't want me to, but I'd like to see what you're capable of. Your last job was very impressive, and I'd like to see how you work. She seemed to falter at the very end since his expression didn't change when she asked the question, and decided to mumble out if you don't mind, that is, at the very end. Naruto thought about it for a moment. She looked sincere enough, and the other girl Miragen was not around for her to fight with this time. His only concern was that he wanted to avoid getting too close to people in this dimension. He didn't want to hurt anyone by his departure when he found his way home. If you want to tag along to watch, that's fine. This mission shouldn't take me too long. He started walking down the street again, wondering if she would follow him after all, only to have a hard time keeping the grin off his face when he heard her run up and fall into step next to him. Naruto stopped and looked around for a moment. They were far enough away from the town so hopefully any noise he made wouldn't disturb anyone. He would have been here earlier if he'd been able to jump from tree to tree, but he decided against doing that with Erza present. It would only spawn questions he really didn't feel like answering right now. Well, this looks like a good spot. Do you want any help? I might be able to use my swords to help you cut down some trees faster. Naruto appreciated her offer, but still waved it off. Nah, it's fine. Where I come from, we were on the move a lot, so I have plenty of experience when it comes to acquiring lumber. Erza watched as Naruto held up a hand, and it looked as if a faint bluish-gray hue started to form around it. The blonde walked up to a nearby tree that he had been looking at, and crouching down in front of it, drew his hand across the base of the tree trunk in one swift motion. From where she was standing, she couldn't see if it did anything, but whatever it was Naruto seemed to be satisfied with it. He stood up, then with a loud thump, smashed the palm of his hand against the trunk of the tree. Much to her amazement, the entire tree started leaning away from where he hit it, only to fall to the forest floor with a loud crash. Looking at her over his shoulder, Naruto couldn't help but chuckle at the expression on Erza's face. Have a seat and enjoy the show. If you sit on the stump, watch out for sap. Wouldn't want to get your clothes dirty. If Erza heard him, she didn't acknowledge it verbally, but slowly started walking towards the tree stump while staring at it. I thought you said you only needed logs for this mission. What did you mean when you said lumber? I figure if I go above and beyond, I might be able to get a bonus again. Of course I'll take some plain logs too, just in case. Grinning at her again, Naruto concentrated and a handful of clones appeared next to him. Erza obviously wasn't expecting this, as she began to drop down into a combat-ready stance, only to slowly come back out of it when she realized all the new arrivals looked just like Naruto. Ah, I read your file. Clones and teleportation. Both very rare skills. Sorry if I seemed startled, but I forgot and wasn't expecting it. Don't worry about it, at least you have good reflexes. Erza nodded, then proceeded to sit down on the newly created stump. She watched carefully as the clones of Naruto moved along the tree trunk, using the same technique with their hands to swipe at the various branches, removing them from the trunk. When the trunk was finally cleared, the redhead had a hard time believing what she saw next. The clones stood next to the trunk at various places along it, then at the same time they grabbed it from underneath and lifted it up. With a yell, all the clones tossed the heavy trunk up into the air, and faster than Erza could follow, the real Naruto who was standing at the bottom of the trunk made several waving moves with his arms. As the tree crashed back to the ground, all of the clones dispelled in brief clouds of smoke, and the tree broke apart, into perfect square pieces of lumber. Looking back to Erza, Naruto couldn't keep the smirk off his face when he saw the look of pure disbelief on hers. That was. I don't know what to think. I could probably have done something similar with swords, but it would take a lot of practice. How long have you been doing this? The blonde looked up towards the newly visible patch of sky in the tree canopy. Probably about a year or so. My companions and I used to travel a lot, and if we ever wanted to stay in one place for a decent period of time, I was responsible for gathering materials since I could do it so fast. Erza had since moved towards the sliced-up wood, gently dragging her fingers across the smooth cuts. This is fascinating. How did you slice this log, anyway? I don't believe I could make cuts this smooth with my weapons even if I tried. Mulling over exactly how to explain his elemental manipulation, Naruto settled for shrugging at her and trying to simplify it as much as possible. You said you read my file, right? A nod. Yes. I put down that I'm a jack of all trades. To most people, they'll say that I can do a little bit of everything. I have some techniques that I can perform that manipulate the elements. Erza's eyes looked like saucers. All of them. Naruto began to sweat. Perhaps it wasn't the best idea to explain it this way. The random elemental techniques he managed to pick up in his home dimension were fairly common, and no one would give him a second glance if he performed any of them. It seemed like that was a different matter entirely in Earthland. Well, yes and no. I guess you could say that I'm specially attuned to being able to use wind and water techniques. I can perform various others using lightning, fire, and earth, but they use a lot of my energy and aren't what I'd call strong. The redhead's eyes were still wide, and she was looking down at the sliced-up wood on the ground. So this must have been wind magic then. I knew it was strong, but I've never seen it used up close like this. It's strong, and yes, it can be incredibly destructive. But it will only do what the user wants it to do. So it can be used to strengthen and reinforce as well. How? Naruto shrugged, moving his hands into a familiar sign. It can cool you down as a gentle breeze on a hot day, or it can strengthen an ally who uses fire by feeding the flames. Like all elements, it's all in the intent. As soon as he finished talking, he briefly concentrated once again and a multitude of popping noises filled the small clearing. Several dozen clones immediately turned and started looking for trees without a word from the original. So many clones, and they're all solid. Yep, I'm a one-man army. Erza giggled a little at that, a sound which Naruto was honestly surprised to hear from her, not that he was complaining. When she finally regained control, she asked another question that he didn't recall ever being asked before. So, how many can you make? He actually had to sit and think about that one for a moment. You know, I'm not sure. I've never really bothered to count how many I make. The most I've probably ever made at one time is close to 1,000. That's incredible. You really are a one-man army. Yeah, the only thing is, the more I make, the weaker each one is, and the shorter its life. If I only make one, it can last for a few hours and can do almost everything I can do normally. If I make 100, they'll last for maybe an hour, and can only do a couple of my techniques before they run out of energy and dispel. Erza looked around at the multitude of clones, listening to the crashing noises coming from various places around them. I wish I could make clones, it seems like it would be really convenient. I'm envious. Naruto looked carefully at the girl out of the corner of his eye, pretending to watch some of his clones in the distance. He wasn't comfortable giving out any of his techniques, it was way too early for that. But Erza had come to apologize to him earlier even when she hadn't really done anything particularly wrong other than looking down on him a little. Still, she seemed to be very well respected within Fairy Tail, or at least that's the vibe he got from other members. It might be useful to have an influential ally down the road, just in case. Well, I could try to teach it to you, but I'm not sure how well it would work. You need to have a lot of magic power to begin with, so I'll have to spar against you just to see how much you have. If you have enough, then I'll try to teach you. Erza immediately perked up at the sound of the word spar, and a somewhat sly grin started to spread across her face. You do realize they call me Titania Erza for a reason, don't you? The Queen of the Fairies. That's supposed to imply that you're the strongest female in the guild, right? Actually, yes, I'm surprised you know about it. You always make it sound like you're from far away. I am, but I made sure to do a little research when I got here. Your name is consistently at the top of lists, so it's hard not to want to know what it means. If Erza was at all surprised by this, she didn't show it, and seemed to take it all in stride. What about you? Why do you have the code name, Fire Shadow? Naruto looked back up to the sky again. Where I came from, the strongest warrior in both mind and body, and who gained the utmost respect of the people was called the Fire Shadow. Each country had its own version of its shadow, so there was also other strong warriors like the Earth Shadow and the Wind Shadow. Plus, when I got here, I was given a mission where the name, Fire Shadow, seemed to fit. So I decided to use it. Another mission. Naruto shook his head negatively. I'll tell you some other time, perhaps. It's too long a story, and the person responsible asked me not to talk about it. Master Makarov knows, but he's the only one. I see. Well, if Master believes you should keep it to yourself, then I will trust in his decision. Thank you. Erza waved it off. Thanks aren't necessary. I know better than to pry where I shouldn't. Silence settled over the duo as they listened to the muffled noises of clones working in the forest. The stack of logs and lumber was steadily growing larger as they had talked, and Naruto figured that it was likely he had enough to successfully finish the mission. Before he called a halt to the clones, however, he decided to tease the girl sitting nearby, just to gauge her reaction. Oh, by the way, I should probably warn you for when we spar. I was never called the Fire Shadow where I come from, but there was another word that was constantly applied to me. Really? What's that? Naruto turned to look at the redhead with a rather sinister grin, unpredictable. Much to his surprise, Erza simply blinked, then grinned back. The trip into town was a quiet one. Erza had gone silent on the way back after seeing Naruto make yet another army of clones to carry all of the collected logs and lumber. Naruto was content to let her think. He had already given her more information about himself than he had planned on after only knowing her for a day. Perhaps she reminded him of Sakura, which is why he immediately felt comfortable around her. Maybe there was some part of him that would be naturally vulnerable to her as a result. Regardless of that, he was content humming to himself for most of the way back, looking up at the trees and passively wishing that he could be up there jumping from branch to branch, feeling the wind blow through his hair. He arrived at the office of the construction company that had placed the order barely 2 hours after grabbing the job from the board in the guild, and at first the foreman just sat behind his desk and stared at him incredulously. Naruto got the impression that if Erza wasn't standing there with him, he likely would have been kicked out of the office. The blonde felt nothing but sweet satisfaction when he finally managed to drag the foreman to their company warehouse, only for him to nearly fall over in shock as he saw how full it was, and with some of the logs already pre-cut into usable lumber. The man had tears in his eyes as he shook Naruto's hand vigorously, apologizing over and over again for doubting the claims of the new Fire Shadow, of Fairy Tail, and promised to make it up to him, since they'd be able to start work 2 weeks ahead of schedule. Naruto and Erza watched as workers started filing into the warehouse, many of which began cheering that they'd be able to start their work so soon, and were looking forward to a bonus. It didn't take long for the foreman to return to the duo, to hand Naruto the job completion paperwork, as well as a rather hefty bonus for going so far and above the requirements of the job. At first Naruto felt guilty at getting such a large amount, and was about to return it, until Erza grabbed his arm. It's sometimes considered rude not to accept whatever the client chooses to give you. After all, you did complete the terms of the contract, and the client has given you the stated reward, but since the client put in the request, he is able to add to the reward as he sees fit until you report to the guild and close the mission. But, it's so much. I just feel wrong. The foreman chuckled a little, gaining the attention of the Fairy Tail members. I wouldn't worry about it, Sonny. Most of the bonus I gave you was going to go to the sawmill for their services to slice up the lumber. I just gave you what I would have given them for the lumber you already cut up for me. Naruto groaned, rubbing his forehead. Great, now I feel like I'm robbing others of their livelihood. He noticed Erza frown, but the foreman just laughed outright. Wow, it's not every day I get to meet a mage that's willing to empathize with us ordinary citizens. You shouldn't concern yourself too much. We only have one sawmill in this town and they are currently overwhelmed. Magnolia Town is rapidly expanding, and they can't meet the lumber demand. Hell, I'll let them know what you did and they might even pay for your services to help them catch up. Naruto was surprised, but reluctantly agreed to take the bonus, which seemed to amuse both the foreman and Erza to no end. As they were leaving the building, completion papers and money in hand, Erza decided to offer her opinion. I have to say that I was pleasantly surprised by you today. I did say I'm unpredictable. Erza smiled, but still shook her head. That wasn't what I meant. I'm referring to your work with the clones, your win techniques, going above and beyond the job requirements, and then turning down the bonus after that. Just who are you, Naruto? The blonde scratched at the back of his head and grinned. I understood life's lessons really well, I guess. If I'm gonna make a name for myself, I'd rather have people respect me with a smile instead of shivering in fear. The redhead stopped walking suddenly, and Naruto stopped and turned to see why. She was looking at him, and giving him a small smile. Is something wrong? Again, she shook her head. Nothing at all. You've just cemented my trust in you. I'm glad to call you a friend. That said, she walked up, grabbed his bicep and briefly squeezed it, then continued walking as she talked over her shoulder. Welcome to Fairy Tail. It's a good home. I hope we'll be able to work together in the future. I've got some errands to run, so I'll see you later. Waving over her shoulder, she promptly disappeared around a corner, completely missing the frown on Naruto's face. It had only been one day, and he already had one person's heart he was going to break when he went home. Why did it have to happen to him? Because Kami loves you. You're not helping right now, Kyuubi. According to you, what else is new? You know, you're right, Kami does love me. Enough to stick me with the one being that will never let me feel good. Just go kill something, you'll feel loads better, I promise. I know I'll feel better if I kill you. Oh, big words, little human. You know you can't, you need me. Naruto mentally sighed. Of the tailed demons, why did he have to get the snarky one? Because Kami loves you. Arg. Chapter 4. A challenger has appeared. Two hands slapping down onto his table caused Naruto to look up and see who performed the offensive gesture. His eyes widened for a fraction of a second when they spotted a messy mop of pink hair. His first thought was that it was Sakura, but it barely took a moment for him to remember where he was, and he actually relaxed. Finishing the ramen that he had shoveled into his mouth before he was interrupted, Naruto carefully set his bowl and chopsticks down on the table and raised an eyebrow at Natsu. Can I do something for you? The blonde immediately had a finger pointed right in his face. Fight me. Naruto couldn't help but roll his eyes. He knew this would be coming sooner or later. After having been a member of Fairy Tail for a little over a week now, he felt that he had pretty much every one of the more regular members figured out. Natsu would always challenge anyone who he thought was stronger or he identified as a threat. Naruto figured he was probably both to the Dragon Slayer. Do I have to? That simple question seemed to throw Natsu for a loop. His eyes opened a bit and his mouth hung open. Apparently he was used to either simply getting right into the fight or being turned down immediately. Well yeah, I challenged you, didn't I? It was about this time that Naruto noticed the entire hall had gone quiet. Sure, Natsu yelled loud enough so that people on the other side of the town likely heard him, but seeing as how Naruto completed every mission he'd gotten in record time, he was quickly becoming known within the guild. Everyone was likely curious as to exactly how strong he was. The guild probably used Natsu as a test dummy for new members, though Natsu was likely oblivious to the whole thing. Well, alright I guess. I've got some time to kill anyway. Where are we doing this? Natsu almost started hopping around in front of him. Yeah, alright, we'll go right out front. Follow me. No sooner had Natsu finished speaking, almost the entire hall started standing up to go follow him. Naruto couldn't help but chuckle inwardly. It seems you're quite the curiosity. I'm trying to be discreet, but it seems I'm only drawing more attention to myself. That's because you're impatient. I mean, seriously, you've completed more jobs alone this week than most teams finish in a month. What were you thinking? That I needed money badly. Money, money, money. Ever since we got here, that's all you think about. Live out in the wild like I used to. Thanks, but no thanks. I'm used to at least living somewhat comfortably. Besides, I'm going to need money to get the information and supplies I'll likely need to find my way home. Why do you still want to go back to that place? You mean you don't? I don't really care. I don't like it there, but I don't like it here either. I'm an equal opportunity hater. How charming. Naruto idly watched as a rather large semicircle formed around where he was facing off against Natsu. Everyone was chattering about excitedly, and it looked like a few people had a betting pool going. While Natsu was stretching, Naruto tried to locate any familiar faces in the crowd. The only ones he spotted immediately were two of the white-haired siblings, Elfman and Lizana. They were all talking quietly with each other as they watched Natsu stretch. Happy looked to be sleeping soundly in Lizana's arms. He found the little blue cat to be quite the oddity. Apparently Happy was an exceed, though he didn't know it. When he mentioned it to the cat, Happy merely looked at him strangely and offered him a fish. He accepted the fish to be polite, then was amused as he and Natsu got into a belching contest, much to Lizana and Mirajan's disgust. So why are you so eager to fight me anyway, Natsu? Natsu paused in the middle of one of his stretches, looking surprised at first, then slightly agitated. Because I'm tired of listening to Erza talk about you. The past few days, she keeps telling me that I should look up to you and be more like you. Natsu's volume dropped as he continued talking. Besides, you seem kinda boring to me. I mean, you're good at basic missions, but I never see you do anything else. So then why are you challenging me now when Erza isn't here? Natsu lifted a fist and shook it. Because she won't let me challenge you when she's around. She says I could learn a lot by training under you too, but I don't believe it. Igneel is the only teacher I'll ever need. Naruto couldn't help but smile a bit when Natsu mentioned the dragon. He wanted to say that he met Igneel, and the two of them acted exactly alike, but had to bite his tongue. He did make a promise not to say anything. I'm surprised that Erza won't let you fight me. I normally don't see her stopping you from challenging everyone else, even guildarts. The buzz of conversation picked up in the crowd surrounding them. Apparently everyone else was wondering what this meant now too. Natsu frowned. He looked like he remembered something but didn't want to say what it was. Naruto decided to start slipping into a combat stance, but to his surprise Natsu answered him. Erza says that with my current level of training I can't touch you. She says that if I can't beat her, there's no way I'd be able to beat you. That caused the chatter to pick up in volume. Even Naruto found his eyebrows raising. After his little demonstration for her, she made a point to hang around him whenever he arrived at the guild hall, and would talk to him regularly before and after he left. She even made a point to stop by his apartment before she left to tell him that she'd be gone for a few days. Not even his teammates back home were like that. Naruto appreciated her attention. To be sure, she was a pretty girl, and obviously strong from what he'd heard, though he had yet to see her in action. Still, he was trying not to get more comfortable with her than he already was, he just figured that she was treating him like she would treat most of her friends. What really threw him for a loop was this latest bit of information. Erza was obviously strict with both Natsu and Gray, but anyone would also have to be blind not to see that she doted on the two of them as if they were her little brothers. She had stopped Natsu from challenging him, which meant that she was either thinking that she'd protect Natsu, keep Natsu from annoying him with challenges, or she had some other plan. Well, since you challenged me, it's on. Are we going to have a referee? I'll do it. Murmurs filled the crowd once again, though Naruto was able to pick up the odd exclamations of, "Master." From amidst the din, he couldn't help but get the distinct impression that Makarov didn't often watch these little spars. Even Natsu was looking surprised. The guild master moved through the gap in the crowd that was made for him, then promptly sat down on the ground slightly inside the ring of onlookers. Looking around once more, Naruto realized that the crowd was even bigger than before. Civilians were stopping to watch now, too. Can I come out to play? Not this time. The last thing I need right now is for people to run away screaming. Besides, I don't want to kill the kid. Ah, you're no fun. Sure I am. I just think you'd be misunderstood. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to slice him in half with a fingernail. I can see that going over really well with the crowd. The Kyuubi simply snorted in his mind, and chose not to reply. Naruto began to focus on Natsu once again, who was chatting animatedly with Makarov. It doesn't matter, master. I'm gonna win this one. Whatever they were talking about previously, Naruto missed it as he was having his own private conversation. Makarov didn't look like he was willing to continue it either, as he settled for sighing and shaking his head at Natsu. It was then that he turned his attention to the blonde. Naruto. Yeah, go easy on young Natsu. He still has a lot to learn. Before Naruto could reply, Natsu started getting all agitated at Makarov for not having faith in him, and flames began coming out of his mouth as he shouted about being underestimated. For a second Naruto felt a pang of sympathy for the younger teen, but it didn't last much longer than that. Natsu was obviously younger than he was, and he doubted the boy in front of him had actually killed anyone yet. Naruto didn't feel that he actually grew up until the first time he stabbed a kunai into an enemy samurai's head. That was a wake-up call. He'd never truly had blood on his hands before that. Once the first one passed, though, many more followed. Such as war. Are you ready, Natsu? Naruto interrupted Natsu's ranting, and the younger teen immediately adopted a serious expression, nodding at him. Grinning slightly, Naruto started getting down into a ready stance. Left foot forward and right foot back while crouching down slightly, he kept his arms close to his sides with his palms facing outward. The crowd began to murmur again, causing Naruto's grin to grow larger. They all thought he was a mage, and probably figured he was going to use his magic. He wasn't going to use that unless he had to. He was a shinobi. Only the small grin on Makarov's face threatened to give him away, but everyone else was too oblivious to even consider what the guild master could have been grinning about. Natsu wasted no time, however, and with a mighty roar he simply charged at Naruto, a flame surrounding each of his fists. So this is what Igneel talked about. Dragon slayers are like me in that they can control their element somewhat without needing any control seals. That pitiful amount of flame won't even scratch us. I know. I should probably establish now just how out of his league I am. Perhaps I can help him train a little, if he's willing to accept. He's probably too proud for that. I can already tell. The bigger the mouth, the bigger the ego. Wasn't it you who said that? Yeah, I used to be like that once. Back before I knew what the world was really like. I would have told you, but it likely would have melted your puny little brain. I know I've asked this before, but can't we have one conversation without you insulting me? Let me think about that again. Nope. Internally rolling his eyes, Natsu was almost on top of him by the time he snapped back to reality. With a quick sidestep, Natsu's swing completely missed him, and the younger boy went tumbling end over end. The crowd chuckled, but it was barely a moment before Natsu was back on his feet, jumping about in a rage. All the movement had apparently woken Happy up, because the blue cat was currently flying in slow circles around Natsu, telling him to calm down and concentrate. Hey, old man. Makarov looked at Naruto and simply arched an eyebrow. Should I just end it to prove a point? Chuckling, the guild master shrugged. It's your bout. I'm just making sure it doesn't get out of hand. Okay then. Naruto smirked at Makarov, then decided to sit down. He kept the smile off his face as the murmurs from the crowd started getting louder again. Taking a quick glance around, most people had expressions of pure shock on their faces. It didn't take long for people to start shouting at Natsu, likely people who placed bets on him winning, trying to point out that Naruto was vulnerable. The pink-haired teen stopped for a moment, before pointing at Naruto and yelling at him yet again. Hey, what are you doing? Stand up and take this fight seriously. Naruto snorted. I will as soon as you actually start fighting me. Is this all Igneel taught you, how to do a lot of yelling? That comment definitely succeeded in doing what Naruto intended. Natsu's glare dropped to glacial levels, and he imagined that he was likely getting some pretty serious glares from people in the audience as well. I'll show you what being a dragon slayer is all about. Flames started to flicker and appear around Natsu, enveloping him in what looked like a cloak of fire. Good, I've been waiting. I'll even let you get one good hit in before I retaliate. Come on. Some in the crowd jeered at that proclamation by Naruto. Apparently they believed that Natsu would be able to finish it in one punch, and they felt that the blonde was going to make them lose their bets. Natsu didn't waste any time, and immediately started charging where Naruto was sitting. Natsu pulled his fist back again, and Naruto noticed that he was easily moving twice as fast as before. So the Dragon Slayer was finally taking him seriously. A loud booming noise filled the area as Natsu brought his flame-coated fist to the ground, and it appeared to many that Naruto was crushed underneath it. A dust cloud erupted from where Natsu's fist forced Naruto to the ground, and bits of rubble from the stone street were kicked up and sent away from the impact site. Ha, I told you that I'd show you what it means to be a Dragon Slayer. Natsu grinned viciously at the unconscious form of Naruto under his fist. He looked like he was about to say more until the Naruto underneath his hand inexplicably burst into a small cloud of smoke. What happened to Naruto? Where'd he go? Natsu. Behind you. The team looked up to see Happy yelling for him to watch out, frantically pointing behind him with tears in his eyes. That was a nice hit. But you've still got a lot to learn, little brother. Natsu's eyes went wide before he collapsed in a heap at Naruto's feet. Nah, Natsu. Are you dead? You can't die. No. Happy. Relax, he's just sleeping. I hit a pressure point in his neck, he'll wake up in a few minutes. Just let him rest. The little blue cat looked up at Naruto with teary eyes, then nodded and sat down next to Natsu's head, and slowly began patting at the teen's cheek. Seeing a shadow get larger on the ground next to him, Naruto turned his head to see Lizana walking up. He gave her a nod, but she was either too focused on Natsu or was pointedly ignoring him, because she continued to walk past him and squatted down near Natsu's prone form. Sighing slightly, Naruto turned away and walked over towards the guild master. Makarov wasn't smiling, but he didn't look upset either. Was that really necessary? Yes. You sound so certain. Dare I ask why? Naruto closed his eyes as he thought about how best to answer. I needed to give him a goal. A more realistic one. One of Makarov's eyebrows twitched up slightly. Oh, his current goal isn't satisfactory. His current goal is more of a dream. You can't find a dragon that doesn't want to be found. For him, the goal I'm giving him is more realistic, and will help him accomplish his dream as well. Makarov was silent for several moments. Naruto listened to the bustle of his other guild mates and civilians as they returned back to their business. Finally, the old man nodded, and turned to walk back towards the guild. Very well, Naruto. I leave Natsu's future development in your hands. Make him a man that Fairy Tail can be proud of. You got it, old man. Naruto started following Makarov back into the guild, suddenly realizing that he never got to finish his ramen from before. It was probably all cold and totally soggy now, he'd have to order a new one. Oh well, at least money wasn't in short supply anymore. Ow. My neck is sore now. Wait. Hey, Naruto. Naruto. Come back here and fight fair this time. No dirty tricks. Hey, can you hear me, Naruto? Naruto. The fire shadow of Fairy Tail, a truly scandalous sorcerer. Naruto frowned as he read one of the sentences on the cover, then proceeded to flip through the latest issue of Weekly Sorcerer. Even if it was a gossip rag, they sometimes had decent information in them, and he needed every advantage he could get in this dimension. As his eyes scanned the article, his frown only grew deeper. Most of the information here was based on half-truths, likely from people who witnessed his fight with Natsu, or at least part of it. They tried to mock it up in the article, stating that he had a problem with the up-and-coming salamander, and they had it out in public. Some kind of reliable sources all stated that he barely pulled out a win over the salamander, and only by using some dirty tricks. Naruto dropped the magazine on the table and rubbed at his forehead. This was not the kind of reputation he needed. I wouldn't let what's in that magazine to get to you. They just throw articles together for the excitement factor. If you want real news, wait for the newspaper. Naruto looked up to see Lizana giving him a small smile as she sat down across from him. Yeah, I figured as much. But still, how many people might take what this magazine says as the entire truth? Lizana cracked a smile at that, and shook her head. I'm pretty sure that most people only read it for entertainment, and for when the swimsuit issue comes out. Swimsuit issue. Naruto perked up a bit, which quickly changed Lizana's smile into a frown. Yes, they have one. What is it with you boys? Naruto quickly looked away, humming. I don't know. Must be hormones. Chuckling this time, Lizana simply chose to ignore it. Well, whatever. I actually came over here to apologize. Naruto cocked his head to the side, looking at her quizzically. Apologize? For what? I ignored you yesterday, after the spar. I admit I was a little upset about how you beat Natsu, but at least you didn't drag it out. So I guess I also wanted to say thank you. Sometimes Natsu will keep going, taking more damage than he should. It happens all the time when he picks fights with Gray, and sometimes even Erza. Grinning, Naruto propped his head in his hands. Well, I always train to finish a fight in the most efficient way possible. I'll admit to getting a bit aggravated because he was doing more talking than fighting. If I was a real opponent, he'd have been dead or incapacitated. Lizana looked down at her hands in her lap. I know. After I talked to him yesterday, he seemed to be humbled, which is rare for Natsu, believe me. I think he sees you as a sort of rival now, even more than Gray. I don't really need a rival. But if he wants training, I can at least teach him how to fight. I'll let him know you're offering the next time I see him. Silence descended over the two of them, and Lizana reached over to grab at the magazine Naruto had discarded. She left it on the table in front of her, fingers running over the words on the cover. Find love in the stars. 7 tips to finding your perfect partner by comparing astrological signs. Now this I have got to read. Naruto ran his hand over his face as he groaned, causing Lizana to start giggling. I'm just kidding. I don't believe in stuff like that. Did you really think I was serious? Snorting, the blonde looked away. I don't know what to think with you guys. This is the only place I can think of where people laugh as they throw chairs and punch each other. Yeah, that is true. I guess we are a crazy bunch. Yep, and that's why I fit right in. Lizana smiled at him for a moment, then looked towards the bar, where there was a clock on the wall. Mirajan isn't back yet. Something wrong. Lizana shook her head slowly. No. Or at least I hope not. Laxus asked her to come on an S-class mission as backup for his team. They were due back a few hours ago, but they still aren't here yet. I'm sure they're fine. From what I've heard about Laxus and his team, I doubt they encountered any problems. A small smile started spreading across Lizana's face, until she nodded at him. You're probably right. I'm worrying over nothing. A comfortable silence settled over the two of them. Naruto began watching the clock and waiting for the job board to update. He didn't notice as the white-haired girl across from him began fidgeting slightly. She's sorry, by the way. Naruto blinked, caught totally off guard. Who's sorry this time? My sister, Mirajan. Oh. Lizana nodded. She wanted to apologize personally, but she went on a mission the next day. Well, she did have some time to find you and apologize, but she's never found it easy to say sorry. Part of that is the fault of her magic ability. Her magic affects her personality. Yes, Mirajan's main ability is called Satan's Soul. She summons a demon to reside in her soul, and they merge. She gains incredible power, but if she loses focus she can lose control of the merger, so she always has to be careful. Sounds familiar. Are you thinking what I'm thinking? That now's a good time to show our real power and take control of this dimension. Yes. Never mind. It sounds rather hard to maintain control of something like that. I bet she has to practice a lot. I was curious why her personality seems to shift a lot. Sometimes she's really nice, and other times if looks could kill I would have been dead several times over. When Lizana didn't reply, and instead sat there blinking at him with a blank look, Naruto grew concerned. What's wrong? Shaking her head and breaking out of the stupor she was in, Lizana sounded surprised. I think you're the first person who's ever accepted what my sister does, and been understanding about it at the same time. Most of the time people will be afraid and start acting strange around her. Even most of the guild members still tread carefully around her. It's a situation I can relate to, where I came from. So I understand what it feels like for her. Oh, Lizana obviously wanted him to continue explaining, but Naruto held up a finger and wagged it back and forth. Now, I can't go spilling all my secrets at once, or no one will find me interesting anymore. I won't be the fire shadow anymore, I'll just be that guy. That won't be any fun. Naruto finished with a little pout on his face, and Lizana couldn't help but chuckle, then sigh. Fine, but I expect to hear all about it someday. Eventually I'll tell everyone, but for now, I like the aura of mystery that surrounds me. Lizana smirked. Whatever. Erza seems to have taken a liking to you, I'll just ask her to discover all your secrets. She's good at getting people to talk. Naruto snorted. From what I've heard around here, she's good at beating people up. That won't work if she can't catch me. Instead of replying, Lizana simply stuck her tongue out at him, causing the blonde to laugh. He settled down when the clock behind the bar chimed noon, and one of the guild custodians walked over to the job board with a stack of papers in his hands. I'll be right back, I'm going to go see if there is anything of interest on the board. Sure. Naruto swiftly moved over towards the job board. Looking around, it seemed like there wouldn't be much competition today. Most of the people he'd come to consider friends were already out on jobs, and the few people that were here he didn't know well enough to know what kind of jobs they'd be after, so he'd have to read the descriptions fast. The moment the custodian moved away from the board, a small group moved in and started looking over the new jobs, Naruto included. Right away his eyes landed on one with a decent sum as the reward, and judging by the picture on it, the job was in his area of expertise. Grabbing the mission request, he pulled it off the board. He didn't hear any mumbling as he walked away from the board, which caused him no small amount of relief. He'd seen the bickering that could happen if mission requests were fought over, and he really didn't have the patience to deal with that. Makarov would likely be upset if he used his Rasengan to settle any potential disputes as well. Walking back over to the table, he noticed Lizana had flipped open the magazine again, and was apparently skimming through the pages. Do you know where Natsu is? Looking up, Lizana nodded. He shares an apartment with some of the other guys from the guild. He should still be there. He didn't seem like he was in a hurry to do anything. Happy says he's still grumpy about losing yesterday. Chuckling, Naruto showed the job request to Lizana. This is a job right up my alley. Lizana grabbed the request and started reading it. Please help our town. A hermit mage that lived in the forest nearby for many years has gone mad and has started using his magic to animate the corpses of the deceased. The corpses are wreaking havoc in our town. We will pay handsomely for anyone to take care of the hermit, and give a bonus if you bring him to us alive. He was always helping travelers in the past and was a very kind man. We hope he can be saved. What do you think? It sounds like it could be a tough job. You sound confident that you can do it, though. Naruto nodded. I'll be fine. I was going to ask if you and Natsu want to come along. I'll go after the hermit, but before I do that I'm going to teach Natsu how to fight. The corpses are pretty much zombies, so he'll be able to go all out with what I'm going to teach him. Lizana's eyes were sparking. Let's do it. Come with me. Fairy Tail Guild Card. Naruto. Fire Shadow, Uzumaki. Mage Council Classification. C rank mage, based on client and witness reports. Notes. Uses solid clones to perform labor, or as a distraction. Has been said to be able to teleport small distances, but this claim has not been confirmed. Member since October 21, 782, 1 week, 1 day. Completed solo missions, 15. Completed team missions, 0. Reward to date, 136,540 joules. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment and subscribe, as well as checking out the author on fanfiction.net.